In a world where every interaction is an opportunity to create a lasting impression, the fusion of art and technology in physical spaces has now become essential. Welcome to the premiere of our new series, Creative Convergence, which is about bridging art and technology for deeper consumer connection. In this series, we're looking to explore how creativity and innovation come together to craft experiences that captivate, engage, and leave lasting emotional impact on consumers. We'll be looking at things from immersive environments to cutting-edge technology. We'll dive deep into the strategies that brands are using to stand out in an era of sensory and experience-driven expectations. And today, for our first episode, which we're calling Unforgettable Impressions, crafting visions into memorable brand experiences, we are joined by none other than Amar Alnemer, highly influential creative professional who has led transformative design initiatives across multiple industries, with a career that includes nearly 15 years as regional design director at Freeman Company and serving as VP Creative and Design at McRae Imaging Incorporated. Amar now brings his expertise to the forefront as an independent creative director. You've probably seen his ideas, his controversial cues, and all the visualizations of his imagination. And this is recognized Amir as a thought leader. He's earned him over 140,000 followers on LinkedIn and more than 70 million views of his content, making him a recognized name in the world of experiential design. I think it's his unique ability to blend artistic vision with technological innovation that has set new benchmarks in creating emotionally resonant brand experiences. Amar, it's an honor to have you here to kick off our new series. Welcome to the Phygital Lab. Before we dive in, and I know I already gave you a heads up about this, and you probably would have seen it in some of our previous episodes, but we always like to ask our guests a really nice, easy question to begin with, which is, what was the last thing you read? Why did you choose it? And what kind of impact did it leave to you?
Oh, well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the invite. As far as books, I'm not really much of a book reader, to be honest and open about it. I'm a knowledge seeker. I love learning new things. I thrive on trying to understand new technologies, new happenings, new trends. I do love emotional and encouraging quotes. They vibrate very well with me. I do peek and look, from time to time, but I wouldn't categorize myself as a book reader. But knowledge is exactly where I'm at in terms of seeking information.
That's interesting, and we've actually had a guest, possibly even two, that have said a very similar thing, and that further supports the fact that perhaps it's not about consumption in the traditional classical sense that actually inspires new ideas and original thinking. And maybe actually the way that we're consuming knowledge when we're sort of creative people, it's just different. And that's just the way it is.
Maybe. I agree 100% with that. The idea, I think, for me at least, is seeking knowledge takes different dimensions, and absorbing knowledge is another dimension to it. So for me, there's different medias and means to which I can actually, books are basically to understand more about everything in life. It opens your mind to different dimensions. It opens the imaginations of the writer to you. It connects with you. And that's one way of conveying a specific, let's say, narrative and understanding. For me, it's a different way of seeking. I still seek the same things, but not necessarily through book reading, through many different other means. But I wouldn't say book reading is my number one. I do, but not my number one. So,
but it's so true, and I think that when people visit an art gallery and they go to look at a piece of art, they can take an entire story through that. Of course, the artist is trying to convey the narrative that they were originally thinking of when they created that art piece. And then, of course, yes, it can be subjective and down to interpretation, but at the end of the day, you're consuming information about that artist, about that time, about that moment. So I completely agree with you. Knowledge consumption, and when we're looking for places for inspiration or originality, It doesn't have to come from a book. It's
I,
true.
I think actually you put it very, very well in terms of transforming that exact same expression, but looking at art. And honestly, I don't think I've ever thought about it like way, but it's literally in that sense that you just mentioned. You're looking at the art, and you're reading the story through your own way of understanding what the artist wanted to convey to you. There could be a whole book about it, exactly what that art piece could mean. I would rather probably enjoy looking at it and translating that feel that the artist wanted to convey through my own eye. So maybe that's the way I think my mind works in terms of understanding storytelling, art, and knowledge. Is that I'd like to read it through my own eyes, like maybe it's read or specified to me in a specific way. I'd like to understand it my own way. So, but in the end, it's still knowledge seeking. You still want to learn more. You still want to absorb more, but just a different way of absorbing it. Let's just say.
Well, this is great because this leads us really nicely onto this first subject matter that I want to talk to you about. I want to understand the world through your eyes, through Amar's eyes. So I want to see. I mean, you've been in this industry for a recognizable amount of time, and it would be fair to say that you've witnessed many changes when it comes to experiential design. I would say that if you were to look back through your career, the way things are evolving and the way things have evolved, there's two questions there. For you personally, what would you say are the key contributing factors that have kind of driven this evolution of change in experiential design? And for you personally, what were some of those kind of pivotal moments that left an impact on you, whether it was a project, whether it was a moment in time, whether it was a moment where you decided, I want to do it this way? Yeah,
Sure,
it would be
sure,
great to
sure.
know.
So I think that you know consumers and audiences always wanted to engage or be engaged, and so is with brands. They wanted to engage consumers in one way or the other. And I think you know, looking way back, I mean, it used to be just about board games and draw tickets and prize winning. That was the engagement that you used to see at events and shows, and it was really simplistic. But I think the way uh, gens and cultures have evolved recently, especially like in the past 10 years span, I would say, they were so much more exposed to technology, innovation, gaming. Even gaming has evolved so much that it looks almost like a movie reel. So expectations of audiences as they grow, older into being, full-fledged consumers, working, their expectations became higher because they're experiencing something that on as an individual basis, like they're seeing something way more advanced in technology. And, gaming is a prime example because in gaming, it's all about prizes, it's all about engagement, it's all about, so when these audiences are like actually becoming consumers, they'd like to feel more engaged in whatever sense and space there is. And I think slowly, all brands started to recognize that trend happening. Like, people are actually being a bit more demanding. It's higher consumer expectations, especially amongst younger generations who are becoming like, your prime customer base. And with the advancement of digital technology, innovations, it left opportunities for these brands to actually start to excel at creating those experientials. Now, the beauty about it is there's so much of it now that like you can pick and choose what you want, and we'll talk more about that, like as what constitutes a good, a good engagement space. But so it's just expectations became so much higher, and uh, the brands are competing to actually be position themselves. So we get the advantage of that because brands are competing to actually position themselves for a better, a better experiential. Let's just say, they're offering more technology to it. For me, I think honestly, I could, if I may say, I remember a pivotal point where I started thinking there's a really a big shift in technology needs. I think it was like late 2018, 17, 18, something like that. We're working on, because I worked on a lot of large events for different industries. One of them was the medical industry, which is quite big. And they actually asked us to come up with ideas, like of data mapping that can be transformed from just knowledge database into actual art form that people can engage in. I'm like, well, I mean, we've done data mapping, like where you face recognitions and reactions and emotional, but they actually wanted that transformed into a piece of art. And you see that now a lot with, I don't know if you see Rafik Anadol, who does like a lot of these exposition animation stuff like that. It's built around the same idea, but that we're talking like maybe 8 years ago, that they really were demanding something like that. They were demanding and asking for spaces that look different, feel different from one another. So like when people are engaged in different environments, and that kind of paid our attention. Like, wow, these, there's a trend going on here. I mean, this is when I can tell you honestly, I felt it. Is that they want a lot more an engagement in terms of like audience engagement with their space than just attending an event and leaving the event. They were thinking already about the emotional association of being at that event and like how it made you feel and leave. So I honestly can tell you that's where I recognize we must exceed these expectations to actually be on top. So if there's a pivotal point, I would honestly call it at that point.
Thanks for sharing that. I honestly was expecting an earlier date in time, but actually that makes complete sense, and it aligns to something that I've been thinking about, which is that through the noughties, we were becoming acquainted with a different, more sophisticated technology, and then it got more and more sophisticated. And then we started to see adoption rate increase, bell curve. But then what we saw was a lot of struggling brands not really knowing what to do with technology. And you're absolutely right. Second decade, what we started to see was a different type of thinking from both the creative aspect, but also from the application aspect. And that's a fantastic example, actually, of how you're kind of marrying. Well, it's almost the beginning of neurodesign, of how you're kind of
Yes.
integrating the way the mind works and the way decisions are made, and you're taking that data and mapping it into either a random algorithm or something else to produce an aesthetic visual, which itself could also be perceived as either random or something else. But it's that recognition of, let's take something that's actually innately internal and extremely personal and share it back with everybody else in a different medium. And I think you're absolutely right to say that that could be a pivotal moment. And when we look at brand experiences now and creating immersive experiences, we're seeing a lot more of that now, of a
Yes.
lot of kinetic movement in environments, overwhelming people sensorially with abstract imagery and imagery that's plugged into certain engines that allows for random and spontaneous creation. And
Yes. Yes.
it's fascinating. But then I
Yes.
guess now, if we think about it, so that was then, that was the pivotal moment. What do you think some of the essential techniques and strategies what are they that need to be used to create these kind of immersive environments that actually captivate and don't just leave people thinking, okay, that was a spectacle?
Nice, nice. I think the focus is shifting, and it should be always on trying to engage as many human senses as possible to create that really, really deep connection. That's kind of my feel. Like focus on the physical, emotional element um, that the consumers or audiences experience in that environment, in that space, be it short term, long term, extended period of time, and try and introduce the unexpected sensory element. Now people are expecting to, I want to be wowed. I'm expecting to go into that space, and I'm expecting to be. If I'm not, I'm really disappointed. If I'm wowed, yeah, you know what? They met my expectations. But everybody is doing that. So in order for you to actually truly stand out, now you need to do unexpected. Like, whoa, I did not expect this. That's the impression you want to leave. And I often say, like, it's how you make people feel at the end of an engagement is what makes your brand or event or whatever it is so memorable. So, to my thoughts, honestly, I try to aim for the unexpected wow, not just the wow. So that's how I think you can capture on any engagement moment. Just by employing these factors in, engage at all senses, have your physical connection with them, and try and do something that they did not expect.
So that's about creating the unexpected
Yes.
and using sensorial stimulation to achieve that, but do something unexpected within that sensorial framework. Create that contrast. How do you think the role of storytelling in designing immersive experiences has developed? Do you think it's still paramount that storytelling is
Yes,
there?
yes. I think honestly, it's fundamental. I think without it, experiences are going to lack direction. You always want to put a beginning, a body, the whole action of it, and how you end it, so people could leave with actually some sort of resolution, as what you just showed them. I've seen experiences personally, not like that. It's a beautiful experience, but you leave thinking, what was the meaning of that? So that's why you really need a story to actually make sense of what you just gave to people. Like there's one engagement thing I saw recently that I really liked. It's basically using harmonic sounds to connect humans in a sense and create pieces of art from that. Like so, and it actually generates different sounds based on the emotional outpour, or literally like how exactly somebody is feeling at that moment. It would actually generate a completely musical note, and people can connect on two different notes of it and generate a whole new musical thing that actually, on top of that, can be transformed into a visual imagery. This is what I talk about when I say like creating something unexpected. Yes, you'd never expect that. Like you walk in, so this, and then that piece of art is your piece of art. Whatever the emotional connection you just did between two people, or yourself, or what you're feeling at that moment, was actually transformed into a piece of art. This is part of like storytelling, right? So now I'm telling my story through this device to see what I looked like, and I can take that back home. And at that moment, that was my memorable experience per se. So a clear narrative guide, it guides the entire design process, ensuring like that we have really cohesive um, uh, event experiential that actually has an impact when you're leaving that space and place.
I really like that. That's a great example. I've seen that as well. The use of harmonics to
Yes,
actually read, I guess, energy frequency, because
yes,
emotions emit energy frequency. Measure that frequency, use that frequency to then create an output that's visual. It's
yes,
almost the next step of what happened in 2018 that you saw with taking the
yes,
taking the
yes,
data
yes.
output and then visualizing something. It's making an extremely personalized, pragmatic experience. At the same time, you allow the person to become the co-creator. They're actually the subject matter. They become the subject matter of the actual experience, even though they're experiencing it. So it's yeah,
Exactly. You almost like like you said, you're almost letting them lead into what they want to experience versus you kind of not imposing, but like this is what we have. Experience this. You let them kind of like dictate. You know what? I'm going to enjoy this my own way, and this is how my emotional senses at this moment feel like. And you almost let them like almost direct exactly what that story is becoming.
absolutely. Immersive technology. I mean, the word immersive, it's very, very, very much trending at the moment. Let's create an immersive
Yes.
experience. And, if we stick enough screens on the walls, we'll create an immersive experience,
It's
And I think,
possible.
perhaps you'll agree with me that I think it's less about that, and it's more about creating some level of disassociation from where you are currently at
Yes.
physically in that point in time. And it can be momentary. Gamers experience it a lot. And I know that gaming is a subject matter that is of interest to you. What I'd like to understand is, how do you approach, or how would you approach these technologies like AR, VR, the mixed realities, and the kind of the interactive installations in a physical retail event spaces? You kind of talked about it briefly there about storytelling. How would you approach it? How would you recognize this is where we need to introduce VR, AR? This is where we need to introduce an alternative reality.
I hear you. So, in my mind, honestly, like I said earlier, there's a lot of technologies out there, and we need to be kind of cautious. Like I said, we need to have strategic use of technology, which is to me is very essential. You can't just because there's VR, you can't just throw it in there and say enjoy this. What's the purpose of it? It needs to have some sort of purpose. Maybe something much simpler could be a lot more impactful and effective than using a really expensive VR experience. Is my point. So we have to really be very strategic, kind of avoid overwhelming like the physical space with so much of the tech. Like we need to, if we're putting so many of it, it has to have a reason. That is to, for example, enhance the experience, not dominate it, not overwhelm it. So for me, honestly, I think technology should align well with the overall experience and the brand message being wanted to put. So like examples of VR has a great use in specific places, but not in others to me, like, because it actually isolates you from the space you're within. Is that a good thing? Depend on what I'm doing, right? Like if we engage in multiple VRs to experience one thing, that was a great thing. But if it's like an individual, I'm just gonna mention something like in a meeting, you're trying to deliver some sort of story or product message or launch. Everybody's wearing VR. That means everybody's disconnected from everybody else. So there's really got to be very strategic purpose of using whichever technology it is. Same thing with AR. If you're using AR, it needs to have a story, because I see right now so much of this outside, like being produced. Honestly, I would say much of it, it's there, but like I can't really tell what the story is. Like, what are you trying to say? I know the product is, coming out of this, or I know that it's amazing animation. I know it's amazing work that they generated with AR, but half of it lacks content and solid story behind it. What are you trying to say? That's what I mean. So just because the technology is there, don't just use it. Make it really strategic. As why am I using this specific technology? And there's a host of them that you could use, simple, inexpensive to the most elaborate, expensive ones. Pick ones that actually match to the goal that we're trying to do.
That makes complete sense. It's it goes back to that kind of original question. It's Simon Sinek's, isn't it? Why are we doing this?
Exactly.
Why are we doing this? And you're right, we do see a lot of the use, particularly of augmented reality settings or kind of Web3 environments where people can plug in, and ultimately it's about some kind of product purchase or some kind of financial transaction through what they hope to be an emotional transaction. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of it being created, and when you actually get past that, well, that's it. That's pretty, or that's clever. What's the point?
Yes, that's the
Is
thing.
this just your brand showing that you are trying to be innovative, or is it you showing that you understand the technology?
There you go.
Because actually, the world you've created doesn't deliver a story, and that makes complete sense. So when it comes to the integration of technology in whatever environment, you're saying it's about identify the why and the purpose. Every technology element has to have a governing purpose. And
Yes,
obviously, that technology can actually detract and overwhelm the experience if there's too much of it involved. It's got to be there for a reason. That makes
yes,
sense.
yes.
Absolutely.
And I like what you said with the why. Honestly, I always start every concept with a why. Like why are we doing this? Like even sometimes with clients, they want to rebrand, and I ask like, but why? Like, is there anything wrong with your brand? Like, no, but I'm like, so there's no sense in actually rebranding. Let's look at other things where we could help you, move things forward rather than just, that's the. So honestly, like I think answering the why, to be honest with you, it answers all your questions before you even begin. Just say, why am I doing this? Okay, it doesn't look good, or I need, because there might be remedies to all these questions, or these reasons that you're bringing up. There might be simpler remedies than just a whole big, overhaul of everything. So I would always put out there, why would you want to do that? Like, why are you doing that? So the why is definitely a definition to go by, is what I'm saying.
We'll have to thank Simon Sinek for that one. That's
Yeah.
that's definitely it. Let's talk about design. Not quite neurodesign, which is kind of this sort of intersection looking at behavioral psychology, technology, patterns, things like that. I want to talk about emotional resonance
Hmm.
because I mean I'm a fan of yours. I like almost everything that you share, and if I haven't liked, it's probably because I've missed it.
Thank you.
But everything that you do, whether it's kind of blending two brands together, taking a brand and pushing it into an environment that it wouldn't normally be in, like Tiffany in the Maldives or something else. How important do you think you're going to say it's obviously very important, but how important is it to create experiences that resonate emotionally with consumers? And what are, most importantly, the key elements that you think contribute to actually creating this, making it happen? Basically, how do you create
So,
emotional resonance?
well, I think it's actually crucial. in making an experience memorable, and like in leaving. Like I said, we will never forget how something made us feel, and my goal is always to make you feel different about anything that you're looking at or seeing or thinking you might experience. Just evoke your emotions to imagine something. Like you said, I mean, I once imagined, what if Louis Vuitton existed in ancient Egypt? Like, what would it look like, right? I'd like to evoke thinking of that nature. Like I want people to just imagine the unimaginable in a sense. And by doing that, I've actually already gotten into your memorable space of like, now I made you imagine something. You go like, wow, this is different. So for me, actually, emotional resonance is key to leaving the whole experience with something memorable that I'm gonna remember. um like for me, it's key elements for me when I'm doing that is deep understanding, like what the audience values are. What is the audience expecting, what the audience want to see. That starts with that, because I'm creating something that's why whenever I'm talking to clients, I ask them, who's your audience? First and foremost, who are you targeting with this? Are you targeting, C class? Are you targeting audiences? Are you talking Gen Z? What's your audience? Because understanding that is what leads you to the next phase of actually, uh, having strategic use of all these sensory elements and experiences that you want to put in to any project, right? So understanding your audience first. So for me, definitely emotional resonance is key when I'm creating any type of space and environment. I actually start with thinking how. My thought is always, how is this going to feel? Is this going to leave any trace? Like people seeing, are they going to look at it and go, I'm not going to forget this. This is really nice. Just like you mentioned, like some of these taking space into another or blending two brands together to create something that's unique and different. I want you to remember that. So like and the way to do that is to just understand the audience and understand what elements I'd like to evoke within you watching this.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I was pretty sure that you were going to say that emotional connection, without it,
Oh,
you don't have anything really. Um, then and it I would you say it's fair to say as well that these days, if you want the transaction, you need to earn the financial transaction. You need to earn the emotional transaction first. And if you want to earn loyalty, which is extremely difficult to earn these days with such a vast amount of choice, that resonance, that experience has to be really well thought out, doesn't it? And you
yes,
have to start with, obviously, audience first, people
yes,
first, and then you've got to ask yourself that question, which we've discussed before: how do we want people to feel? Because ultimately, that's
absolutely.
everything, right?
And what scares me sometimes is there's a chance of you actually employing innovative technology and experiential. There's a chance that it actually might backfire on your brand if not used strategically and wisely. You might put something out there like So you really have to be careful. Like with the like, I'll give an example of an experiential that still remains with me. Um, um, a client came asking that they'd like to create a product, a sustainability product that it's not selling well. People always imagine sustainability to be kind of lower end, recycled sort of thing. And the challenge for me was like, how do I take this and convert this into an amazingly appealing product? Because we were doing like a lot of events and stuff like that. So I had to build. So I built the whole architecture space. Okay, literally using cardboard material, recycled, and nobody could even believe that was actually cardboard. So that's what I meant by like creating that sensory emotional connection that to the point we're talking about. I really wanted to have an emotional reaction to this by everybody looking at it saying, I can't believe this is not cardboard. I can't believe this is not recycled. And I created something that I would say hasn't been created before. I created like a giant 14-foot wall structure made into different chambers. Each chamber has its own experience, its own colors, its own lighting, its own aroma, its own scent, its own everything. And I took them through experience after experience after experience. And the story was, I'm going to tell you some little trick I did. There's something called, I don't know if you've heard of it, called M-berry. M-berry, okay? So this berry, actually, if you just put it under your tongue or for like 5 minutes, it completely changes the taste of sour uh, uh, like lemon and tomato. It makes it into the sweetest fruit you have ever tasted in your life. Okay, so my experience was just in the beginning of the experience. We had a plate. Just take one, just put it on the tongue. It's like a candy, nothing to it. They take it in. We'd go through each experience. There's like digital content there to experience. There's like VR. There's the workshop. Everything is made out of completely recycled material. And there's like I even made a Formula One car made out of cardboard, stacked up and put on the wall. And it was a beautiful experience. And at the end of it, there's a piece of lime or a piece of tomato. Take one. It doesn't matter if you don't want. And they would chew on it, and the amazement on their faces, like you just cannot believe that this is actually tastes so good. But the trick isn't in that. The trick is I wanted to leave the whole experience, and I wanted to give you a closure that you will never ever forget. And honestly, to this day, I talk to some of the colleagues of mine, and like, oh, do you remember that experience we did back in And it was just a simple thing, right? But that's kind of like how I engage that emotion in such a deep way, through the process of showing them something they never expected, touch and feel that they never expected. I tried to actually touch up on every element, even sound. Each room had its own sound. So when you leave, you're like, oh my goodness, this was like a really different experience. And then close with that, bite of lemon that's just, like multiplies everything by 10, because now you got that unexpected element that I told you, because you would never ever expect a tomato to taste like the sweetest apple or lemon to taste like the sweetest mango. I'm not sure, but it was just an amazing flavor. So that was kind of like what I mentioned by creating an experience that includes unexpected sensory triggers at the end of it.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. It's like the narrative was just, let's just create the unexpected, the remarkable.
Yes.
And
Yes.
because the whole thing was actually remarkable anyway. Because if
Yes,
anyone were to
exactly.
ask structurally, what is this made from? Cardboard.
Yes.
What? Then you go into each room and you get this surprising sensorial stimulation that's probably contrasted throughout. And then right at
Yes.
the end, you don't realize it. But what led to that remarkable experience was the little bits that you
Yes.
ate
Yes.
right at the beginning.
Absolutely.
It's fantastic. But again, it
And
just plays into that whole point of storytelling,
exactly.
and
Exactly.
that's it.
Exactly.
And that was almost
Exactly.
an entire story.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess for brands out there, so that was a success story. You said right at the beginning, everyone's expectations are continuing to rise, and the benchmark set by their last best experience. If
Exactly.
you're pushing experiences out there like that, and everything else, what does a brand need to do to ensure that their design, that what they're trying to do with multisensory engagement play, actually creates a memorable experience? What do they need to do to stand out when you've got people like you supporting other brands to try and come up with other things? What is it they need to do to ensure that things work?
Okay. I would say number one, reach out to me. They can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's great. Yeah,
No. But honestly, I think creativity and always trying to think out of the box and having full knowledge of what's out there for you as a tool is key for me. Like whether it's an internal creative team from that brand or whether an external agency that they're trying to hire, just knowing what's out there to utilize, and having the creative mindset to always think there's got to be different. Like, I mean, honestly, just for me, every project I take, I always call it that's my best project. But that's because it's always my last project, because I don't hold anything back for the next project. It's all out on this one. Done with this. Next one's going to be all right. So I honestly can tell you, every time I finish one project, this is the best I've done yet. And then I go to the next one. Oh my God, this is even better because I did this and I added that. And that's because I told you earlier, like I just love knowledge and always being on top of technology and what's out there. So key for me is for them to stay, to always have a creative mindset of thinking different and just knowing what tools are out there. Because what I could do today, I couldn't have done 10 years ago just because of what's available today, right? So I was thinking 10 years ago one way, and but the mindset of always of finding that little niche that's going to make this be different, another level, is always there. I'm always seeking like these little elements that would, you know, put whatever I'm working on to another level. Sometimes, as I mentioned, even simple low cost elements like the mberry I just mentioned to you can actually really add such a huge sensory experience. So it's not really like just about money. I mean, I'd ask always for budget, but it's more for me to know which direction am I taking the work for you. Like, what do you want to see? Are we talking like, I'm not going to throw figures out there, but budget helps me understand what I'm creating for. I'm still going to make the best product for you on that budget, right? But it does, just because it's low budget doesn't mean it won't come up good. It will still be, but like don't expect 80-foot giant screens, for $10,000. That's not going to happen, right? So, but I know if you're $10,000, I'll work something. But if you have a million or two, then I'll figure out another idea for you. But that's kind of how it starts. So, again, back to always creating it with a multisensory engagement.
But what I wonder how many brands out there at the moment have got dedicated people that their entire existence there is just to consume knowledge, consume what's out there, and consume how people are making them blend and work together. Because it sounds like that's part of the key, isn't it? That's part of the
Yes.
kind of essential mix to knowing what to do and when. Because knowing what to do and when with a higher degree of certainty will almost certainly produce a more confident budget and probably something higher because there's
Yes.
more confidence, right? So that's kind of what it feels like. But I guess when you've got brands all kind of competing, vying for attention, we've kind of talked about the approach to the experience design itself.
Okay.
But when it comes to kind of getting there and doing it and trying to balance creativity and practicality when you're actually developing these experiences, what would be your advice?
I mentioned before, like for me, it's always about trying to make sure it's a multi-sensory engagement as much as possible as you can. Try and like embrace innovation because I mean to this day I still see some companies, some brands like rejecting certain innovations like AI and that sort of thing, that it's AI. And my argument is always like, yes, it is, but for me, it's just a tool. It's really, I still need to work with it. I still need to navigate it. I still need to figure out how to use it. But just embrace innovation, like just really embrace innovation, take it in, and continuously learn and adapt to whatever is out there. So, I keep talking about multi-sensory engagement, and we say it's five senses, but there's always that I call it the X sense, the sixth sense, if you know what I mean. And that and that isn't just actually one sense I discovered. It's actually almost 33 senses. It's a profound way to think about it. It's like your state of mind, your conscious, your imagination. There's so many elements in that X sense, I should call it the sixth sense, that you can still engage part of your experiential, depending on what you're doing. So, in all honesty, I think it's just companies need to just embrace new innovations of technology and don't be, I know they have reservations. I know what they are because I talk to them, but it's okay to, stay on the knowledge base, I should say, like stay engaged with the knowledge that you're seeing and the things that are coming. And, one day you'll have the moment where, you know what, we can apply this, we can employ this, let's try this. You can try it slowly too. You don't have to go all out just because you're a big brand. You don't have to go a big thing. You can always start, with a small experience, see how that works. Like take, for example, most of the brands now are doing the culinary, like a cafe, coffee type of, which is, and it's becoming more popular, and it's not actually slowing down. It's getting much bigger because they've noticed that a lot of the clientels and consumers are loving it. Like if I loved, Louis Vuitton, I don't mind going to having Louis Vuitton coffee. But the point I was making to this is that if you're doing that, you really need to ensure that that experience matches your brand. Like it's not a sub to brand. So if your customer service is top notch, that experience needs to be even more top notch because that's a more accessible experience, right? So in that sense, just what I mean, like brands need to just be aware of what's out there and how to do it. But my point to this was, this started slow. They didn't start by opening giant cafes, like a Dior or Louis Vuitton or Prada. It started off with like a small, kiosk, offering free coffee. And then, my goodness, people are just like overwhelming this. Like they're just loving the idea of giving free ice cream, Prada or Louis Vuitton coffee or Gucci flowers. They saw the reaction to it. It was a small thing, but you know what? Let's build it into a bigger thing. And God and behold, it proved to be working. So that's my idea. Just embrace, and don't take giant steps. You can take baby steps and understand how that brings people together, and like how what it generates in terms of emotional reactions, and go with that.
That's it. That's interesting, and you're absolutely right. When we think about it, those areas where people you know, can almost get that instant gratification from coffee or chocolate or flowers or something
Yes.
like that, almost immediate sensory stimulation. Um, it is an expanding area. It is a growing almost trend. I mean, looking ahead, when we think about experiential design, neuro design influenced by sensorial stimulation to try and close that gap between consumer expectation, brand perception. What do you think, or what do you foresee as the most kind of emerging trends that are going to influence kind of the future? And how do you think brands and designers should prepare so they can stay ahead and keep continuing to kind of innovate in this area?
I honestly see almost immediate engagement in terms of experiential versus like preset, like the ones we talked about earlier, where it's like almost like a neural type of reaction to space and place. And you always have to keep in mind that it needs to be with the new generations always and just enjoying capturing moments, I could call it, that they like to capture moments, and just creating a space that enhances that, pushes that, uh, and just making sure that the latest that is out there is being employed strategically, like maximize whatever available resources out there. But I honestly see the immediate, and to me that's what I'm going with, trying to see how I can start to engage that immediate engagement, like immediate reaction, reactive. If I want an example idea, like let's say I'm at a space, I have this digital interaction. Give me something that actually is going to be unique for me. If I dance, would I dance with something in front of me? If I stand and I want to create different portraits that evolve as I'm standing right looking at the camera. Let's say there's a camera. So there's technologies that are coming that could really enhance that. But for me, honestly, I think the instant reaction, like instant engagement of a space, is where I see the next step being. Like you walk into a space where, as you walk in, I'm not sure it's a tunnel, screens, but things walk with you. You know, if you're in a, like let's say you create something where it's an underwater tunnel, and as you walk in, things are walking with you. As you stop, things stop with you. Just immediate reaction, like immediate immersive space. That's kind of where I see the next phase being. Um, some of the evolution that's happening like lately in AI in particular, which is basically being able to use video, text to video, image to video, which is, I mean, rapidly moving so fast. Some of the stuff I saw, these were productions we worked on for like weeks, a few years ago. I mean, literally, we sat down for weeks trying to figure out how to do this and how to animate that. And I'm looking at him like, I can't believe this. Like, it's just incredible. So, adaptation of that, like adaptation of all these things and having it integrated within what you're doing. And so I think that's kind of like the way to set yourself forward.
That's interesting that you think that that's the way forward. This kind of instant impact, and it's,
Yes.
to me, it's like that. Well, that makes complete sense, because if up to this point we've been trying to predict what's going to be emotionally resonant with the consumer, if now we have the ability, and maybe in the future, maybe it's there now, to be able to allow the experience to almost like evolve at the tempo of the consumer wishes it to.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
the consumer, as you say, walks through that tunnel, that submersive tunnel, but actually the submersive elements don't reveal themselves until they make progress. And if they choose to turn around and walk back, does it change? Who knows? But does the experience then retract on itself? I mean, you need to design something, Amar, so we can, we can all
I will.
experience it.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just an idea thrown out there. It's basically a collection of everything that's out there in terms of like digital content, immersive experiences, interaction with space. I mean, that was just like a simple example I threw, but there's many ways. The point I'm trying to get to is the for me the next evolution is instant gratification of interaction with the space versus I'm going to prepare this, and then when they come they will see this element. uh, what I'm talking about is like we don't know what they're going to see. We really don't. But it's going to be fun. We know that. Like it's going to be something engaging. We know that, but we don't know what it is, and that's the beauty of it, right? The element of being unexpected. That's what I like. Like you might see things you didn't even expect. I'm not sure. Like maybe imagery that you didn't expect. It creates pieces of art. It relates to you in some sort of way. It sends you whatever you want. Like maybe you can connect to it and it sends you pictures or images or maybe even an entire AR experience that sends you. Then we could just experience that back home and look, this is where I was and immerse with that. But there's really again I'll go back to the point of just trying to kind of balance creativity with practical limitations that we have. These are imaginative things that we could, think about. I dream of this, I dream of that. Um, you know, but it's just a balance, right? Like, what is the budget we have that we could work with, and then maximize whatever available resources that we have to, just make an impactful experience on people. You know,
I think the future is it's going to be really interesting.
oh, it's beautiful. I
It's
I always say that the future is going to be. I mean, look where we have gone since, like just because the whole flood of all the innovation in AI, I think like it was 2 3 years ago. Like that's when it started, and it looked very primitive at the time. It was like a toy, like a gaming, like you play around with it, but I couldn't picture it then being used like for business purposes. Like and but look at us 3 years later, and my goodness, I don't think I can actually work without it because even for presentation work, it helps immensely in terms of like conceptual creations and presenting mood boards and ideas to clients before we even go 4 weeks in to discover that wasn't what they were looking at altogether from the first place. It
Mm.
saves us tremendous amount of work. And then honestly, I'm going to touch on another thing, like in terms of sustainability and efficiency. That's what it does. Work is consumption of energy, right? And
Yeah.
just being efficient in that manner is actually, it really is sustainable in a sense, because you're not working hours and hours that are being wasted on, I should say, because you're starting back from scratch 4 weeks later. But you spent a day or two finalizing concepts, present that to clients, let them see it. If it's a go, then you work from there. You've saved so many hours of unneeded work, basically. And I call that sustainability, just as much as we're sustainable in terms of like recycled products and all that. Time spent, footprint is also for me sustainability. So that's part of being efficient.
Yeah. Well, it's self-sustaining, isn't it? That's
Yes.
self-sustaining action and self-sustaining activity to be more efficient. We're at our best when we have the most amount of energy. That's when we can really process, push, create. And if you're wasting huge amounts of energy, then you're being anti-sustainable to yourself, you know? But I think I am very excited about the future, and especially with people like you in it, have this continual need to consume knowledge and be inspired and be right at the edge of what's happening with technology and be excited but also practical in the way that you're thinking about how to use that technology and how to integrate it into an environment. And I think that's an incredible idea that you just left us kind of with, which is, imagine an experience that recognizes the frequency of the
Yes.
individual that's stepping into it. And so the experience, if it's purely about uplifting that individual, it reads and recognizes through
Yes.
facial movement, neural recognition, motion detection, and maybe by outputted frequency, and
Yes.
just guides them into a much more safer, nicer place, state of mind. And actually, all it is, I mean, it's borderline therapy,
Yeah.
but it is just that, isn't it? And people call it retail therapy, but actually, well, they've called it retail therapy for years, for generations now,
Yeah.
haven't they? When you go out there to consume something to make yourself feel
Uh-huh.
better. Well,
Uh-huh.
part of that is this. Now, great experiences are about emotional heightening, emotional transition from a place that's not necessarily where you want to be to a place where you're actually enjoying and feeling more at
Yeah.
peace, more feeling more cohesion.
Yeah,
That
and I
makes
would call
sense.
it like, if I it's like basically sensory interaction in real time. That's literally what it is. Like, so you're like, actually, like you said, you can take yourself to places, like you said, shopping therapy. This could be part of the shopping therapy experience, where it isn't just about spending money to get a product that you like to feel good with, but it actually there's a whole experience where, and this is I think the idea, to attract clientele to because you're gonna go to a place where it isn't just about buying a product, but it's really about a whole experience that you're gonna get there. Like whatever they create, maybe it's something where an element they change the element every 3 months, so that you always want to go there again and again, because there's always something different in that space that you experience, or the experience itself. Every time you go, that sensory interaction will give you a completely different result. Like, so you get to see, I don't know, your mood, makes you feel better, understand how you need to be. It's maybe see an image of your, sometimes maybe we're all visual, like sometimes maybe seeing in real time what your mood looks like, and then
Yeah,
you come again. It's like it's a way of just really, like you said, just having that moment of you in your space, but it's becoming more about your your own soul therapy. Like you go in shopping, but it's a lot more than shopping. There's a whole sensory elevated element to it, like create a dynamic, responsive environment in that space that makes you want to come again and again. So
we could talk for hours about this, Emma, and I'm
yes,
sure, and
yes,
I would
yes.
love to pick your brain further and further. You've left us with probably more than enough now to process and certainly reflect on. And it's going to be difficult for me to kind of create some kind of summary. But for my I guess my three key takeaways from this: if you're looking to create a sensorial experience, it must resonate on an emotional level. There's no question about that. But
Yes,
always start with, who are your people and why are you
yes,
doing it? Start there, and that will help you lead to or progress down that road of, why are we doing things? This is why we're doing it. How do we want people to feel? Okay, this is how we want people to feel. Now let's look at technology, but be careful not to try and implement everything just because it exists.
you honestly summed up exactly what I wanted to say.
That's
If
good.
you had asked me, Amar, how would you sum this whole thing up that we had? I was going to tell you, like, really try and focus on understanding consumer behavior in response to innovation, because not everything that you throw out there is supposed to get you results. Just be careful what you do. And then not every trend is worth following. Like, some are essential, staying relevant, some are not. And then I was going to say, like, just be consistent and persistent in your approach, like in terms of trying to learn new things, trying to have your own brand, the way you operate, the way you work. And last but not least, just keep learning and adapting to remain in the forefront of it all. Just like, that's how the only way you're going to survive. Look at some, the brands who don't, just stay behind. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want to name names, but just always try and stay on top.
Yeah. Or they disappear entirely.
Exactly, because they refused to just adapt to the new time. They just like, no, our old ways always worked. Well, it doesn't. You just have to be very careful. That's why I say you got to be adaptable, agile. Just you don't have to use whatever comes up, like I said, right away, but just be aware of it, take it in, absorb it, and then see what works for you.
Thank you, Emma. It's great advice, and you even threw a few extra bits out there that you hadn't mentioned, first of all, which are some trends are just simply not worth adopting, which is absolutely 100% true. But it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Amar. Thank you so much for giving up the time. We know I know you're a busy guy, but it was wonderful to understand just a little angle of the way that your mind works, and how you got to where you've got to today, and what you think about the future. So thank you so
No.
much, and hope to have you back here again.
Wow, it's my absolute pleasure, Tony, and I would love to do this again. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.